I get it, you're standing in front of your shop's empty corner, thinking about adding a dedicated work surface, but you keep hearing stories about benches that buckle under a single die or drawers that jam the moment you need that one extra tool. The last thing you want is to drop a good chunk of cash on a table that ends up being more of a storage shelf than a sturdy platform for heavy-duty molding work. You're also trying to figure out whether the price point reflects real value or just a marketing bump. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's walk through what the RFBX CPT-ADNU heavy-duty mold workbench actually brings to the table, where it shines, and where it might leave you reaching for a different solution. First off, the core of any workbench that's supposed to hold molds, dies, and the occasional 20-kilogram block is the top surface. This model uses an 8 mm thickened and widened A3 steel plate. In plain terms, that's a plate that's not just a thin sheet you can feel flex under a modest load, it's a solid slab that stays flat even when you're tightening bolts on a large casting fixture. In my own shop, I've seen cheaper benches develop a noticeable dip after just a few weeks of repeated hammering. The thickened plate here eliminates that worry. You can place a full-size die cutter and a sheet of metal on the surface, and the surface stays true, which is crucial for maintaining tolerances on precision work. The frame itself is built from 2 mm thickened welded square tubing. Square tubing is a common choice for industrial benches because it resists twisting, but the extra millimeter of material adds a little more rigidity without a massive weight penalty. When you're moving the bench around, maybe you need to reconfigure your layout or bring it into a tighter space. The welded joints hold up under the stress of being lifted and set down repeatedly. It's not a flimsy knockdown design. This is a piece you bolt together once and then largely forget about. One of the biggest practical headaches with any heavy bench is the drawers. The RFBX CPT-ADNU uses ball bearing slides on both the left and right drawers. In everyday use, that means you can pull out a drawer loaded with hand tools, cutting dies, or even a small hydraulic press without feeling that grinding resistance you get on older metal slides. The ball bearings keep the motion smooth even when the drawer is fully loaded, and they're less prone to rusting compared to plain steel rails if you occasionally get grease splatters on them. I've seen a few benches where the drawers start to stick after a few months of exposure to coolant. This one seems to sidestep that problem. Leveling the bench on uneven shop floors is another often overlooked issue. The built-in carbon steel and PVC heavy-duty leveling feet give you a bit of wiggle room to get the top perfectly horizontal, which matters a lot when you're aligning a die set. The PVC inserts help absorb vibrations, so if you're running a small press on the bench, the whole setup is less likely to bounce around. It's a small detail, but in a workshop that has a concrete slab that isn't perfectly flat, those feet can be the difference between a smooth operation and a constantly shifting platform. Now, let's talk about who will actually benefit from this bench. If you're a professional mold maker, a small batch metal fabricator, or even a serious hobbyist who regularly works with thick sheet metal and needs a reliable surface for die cutting, this is a strong candidate. The bench's size, 180 cm by 75 cm with an 80 cm height, gives you enough workspace to handle large panels without feeling cramped. The two drawers provide immediate, organized storage for your most used bits, keeping the floor clear and your workflow efficient. The heavy-duty frame can also take the weight of a modest bench-mounted drill press or a light hydraulic press without sagging. On the other side, if you're only occasionally tinkering with a small handheld cutter or you're looking for a compact table to squeeze into a cramped garage, this might be overkill. The footprint takes up a fair amount of floor space, and while the leveling feet help, you still need a fairly level area to make the most of its stability. For a casual DIYer who only needs a flat surface for occasional sanding or assembly, a smaller, less expensive workbench would likely serve the same purpose without the bulk. A practical weakness that shows up when you think about daily shop life is the weight. With that thick steel plate and reinforced frame, the bench tips the scales at well over 200 kilograms. It's great for stability, but moving it once it's assembled is a real chore. If you're in a rented space where you might have to rearrange your layout frequently, you'll need to plan maybe a pallet jack or a set of heavy-duty sliders to shift it without straining yourself. The manufacturer doesn't provide built-in casters, which makes sense for a stationary heavy-duty table, but it's something too.